The Keth'hari hunting pack had been tracking the strange biped for 3 rotations across the frozen wasteland of Xerion Prime. Their elongated, muscular frames, built for pursuit and killing, moved with practiced silence through the crystalline ice formations that jutted from the planet's surface like the bones of ancient titans. Pack leader Vexthen's thermal sensors detected the creature's heat signature growing stronger. The alien walked upright on 2 legs, covered in strange synthetic materials that seemed to regulate its body temperature. Most peculiar of all, it showed no fear. Every other species they'd encountered on this desolate world had either fled or attacked immediately upon sensing the Keth'hari presence. "It carries no weapons," whispered Xerion, the pack's tracker, her razor-sharp claws extending unconsciously. "Yet it does not run." The pack was desperate. Their last hunt had failed when their prey, a massive ice crawler, had escaped into the deep caverns below. They had been without food for 6 rotations, and their energy reserves were critically low. The bioluminescent patterns along their spines, normally bright with health, had dimmed to barely visible threads of light. Corvash, the youngest of the pack, growled softly. "Perhaps this creature will provide sustenance. It appears soft, vulnerable." But Vex then held up a clawed hand, signaling for patience. Something was different about this being. In all their cycles of existence, they had never encountered prey that simply stopped and waited when it detected their approach. The human, for that's what it was, though the Keth'hari didn't know this yet, had indeed stopped. Dr. Marcus Chen adjusted his environmental suit's heating system and checked his portable scanner. The readings were clear: 4 large life forms, approximately 200 meters ahead, moving in coordinated formation. Predators by all indicators. Marcus had been studying xenobiology for 15 years, but this was his first field assignment to an unexplored world. His research team had established a base camp 3 kilometers away, but Marcus had volunteered for solo reconnaissance to gather baseline data on local fauna. He reached into his pack and pulled out his standard-issue emergency rations, a compact meal bar that could sustain human metabolism for 6 hours. As he unwrapped it, the crinkle of the packaging seemed to echo across the frozen landscape. The Keth'hari froze. "What is it doing?" Xerion mental communication rippled through the pack bond they shared. The strange creature had produced something from its coverings and was consuming it. The pack watched in fascination as the being took measured bites of what appeared to be processed nutrition. Vexthen's predator instincts warred with curiosity. The creature was clearly aware of their presence. Its body language suggested alertness, not the panic-induced blindness that usually preceded an easy kill. Yet it continued its feeding behavior as if they posed no threat. Marcus finished half his meal bar and paused, looking directly toward the ice formation where he knew the predators were hiding. His suit sensors had been tracking them since they'd begun their approach. For individuals, each roughly 2.5 meters tall, with body temperatures suggesting a high-energy metabolism. They were probably hungry, making a decision that would have horrified his safety instructors back on Earth. Marcus broke the remaining half of his meal bar into 4 pieces. He placed them on a flat section of ice about 10 meters away from his position, then stepped back and waited. The Keth'hari pack bond crackled with confusion. It's offering food." Corvash's mental voice was barely a whisper. "Impossible," Vex then replied, but even as he denied it, he could smell the rich, complex nutrients in whatever the creature had placed on the ice. His stomach, empty for too long, cramped with desperate hunger. "No prey offers food to predators," Xerion added, but her thermal vision was locked onto the small morsels that radiated faint heat in the frigid air. The human backed away further, removed what appeared to be a communication device, and began speaking into it. The Keth'hari's universal translators, embedded in their neural cortex, struggled with the alien language before finally beginning to parse meaning. "Base camp, this is Chen. I've made contact with local fauna. For individuals, definitely sapient based on movement patterns and tool use. I'm attempting first contact protocols. They appear to be in distress, possibly nutritional deficiency based on reduced bioluminescence." Vexthen's spine patterns flickered with surprise. The creature recognized their intelligence. More than that, it had correctly identified their weakened state. The human continued, "I've offered food samples, maintaining safe distance. They seem curious but cautious, requesting xenobiology team for consultation." For long moments, neither side moved. The Keth'hari remained hidden, while Marcus stood in the open, occasionally speaking into his communicator, but otherwise maintaining a non-threatening posture. Finally, hunger overcame caution. Corvash, the youngest and most desperate, broke from cover and approached the offering. His packmates hissed warnings, but he was beyond caring. If this was a trap, at least he would die with something in his stomach. Marcus watched as a magnificent predator emerged from hiding. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, with an elongated skull, powerful limbs ending in retractable claws, and a hide that seemed to shift between dark gray and silver. Most striking were the patterns of fading light that traced along its spine and limbs, biological circuits that spoke of a sophisticated nervous system. The alien approached the food cautiously, its large eyes never leaving Marcus. When it reached the offerings, it paused, then delicately picked up one of the meal bar pieces with surprising gentleness for such fearsome claws. The Keth'hari's enhanced olfactory system analyzed the food in seconds. Proteins, carbohydrates, essential minerals, and something else. Something that triggered every survival instinct in their evolved biology. This wasn't just food, it was medicine. The nutrients were exactly what their depleted systems needed. Corvash consumed the portion in a single bite, and the effect was immediate. Warmth spread through his system, and the dim patterns along his spine flared brighter. The rest of the pack needed no further encouragement. 3 days had passed since the initial contact, and the impossible had become routine. Each morning, the human, who had somehow communicated that his designation was Marcus, would venture from his distant shelter to the same meeting spot. Each morning, he would bring food. The Keth'hari pack had taken to calling him the provider, though they struggled to understand his motivations. In their culture, food was power, territory, survival. Sharing resources with strangers, especially potential threats, was contrary to every evolutionary imperative they possessed. Yet here he was again, removing his portable shelter's entry seal and emerging into the pale morning light of Xerion Prime's distant star. His thermal signature was steady, calm. No fear scent, no aggressive pheromones. The pack's chemical sensors, capable of detecting emotional states across dozens of species, found only curiosity and something else they couldn't identify. Vex then had spent the previous night in deep meditation, accessing the ancestral memories stored in his genetic matrix. Nowhere in the vast repository of Keth'hari experience was there precedent for this behavior. Predators did not feed other predators. Prey did not willingly approach apex hunters. The natural order was simple: hunt or be hunted, consume or be consumed. This human defied nature itself. Pack leader, Essikanara's mental voice carried uncertainty. The creature approaches with larger quantities today. Indeed, Marcus was carrying a significantly larger pack than before. As he reached their established meeting point, a circular clearing surrounded by ice pillars that provided natural cover, he began removing items the Keth'hari had never seen. A metallic container that emitted heat, strange implements that gleamed in the weak sunlight, and food, far more food than the small portions he'd shared previously. "Greetings," Marcus said aloud, knowing his words would be translated. He'd learned that these beings possessed sophisticated neural translation capabilities, a discovery that had excited the xenobiology team back at base camp. "I brought lunch for everyone today." The concept of lunch translated poorly, carrying implications of scheduled consumption and social gathering that had no equivalent in Keth'hari culture. They ate when they could, what they could, as much as they could. The idea of regular, planned meals shared with others was alien. Corvash emerged first, as had become his habit. The young hunter had recovered dramatically over the past 3 days, his spine patterns now glowing with renewed vitality. One by one, the rest of the pack emerged from hiding. Vex then moved with the measured dignity of a leader who was deeply confused but unwilling to show weakness. Essikanara's lithe form seemed to flow across the ice, her tracker's instincts cataloging every detail of the human's behavior. The fourth member, Torgen, remained partially concealed. The pack's heavy assault specialist was uncomfortable in situations that didn't involve clear friend or foe designations. Marcus activated his meal preparation system, and the scent that emerged caused all four Keth'hari to freeze. It wasn't just nutrition, it was cuisine. Complex proteins arranged in appetizing combinations, enhanced with chemical compounds that triggered pleasure responses across multiple species' neural architectures. My team's biochemist analyzed your metabolic requirements, Marcus explained conversationally as he worked. Turns out your species requires a specific combination of amino acids that's pretty rare in this environment. These rations are designed to be universally nutritious, but I added some supplements that should help with your energy recovery. The implications of this statement rippled through the pack bond like shock waves. The human had studied them, analyzed their biological needs, modified his food specifically to benefit their health. This was not prey behavior. This was not predator behavior. This was something entirely outside their understanding of the natural order. Why? Vex then finally asked, his translator rendering the mental concept into audible speech with great difficulty. Marcus paused in his food preparation and looked up at the imposing pack leader. Even through his environmental suit's visor, his eyes were clearly visible, soft, intelligent, lacking the hard edge of a predator's gaze, yet holding steady without fear. Where I come from, Marcus said, we learned long ago that survival isn't just about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about cooperation, building relationships, understanding that sometimes helping others helps yourself in ways you can't immediately see. He gestured to the prepared meals, steam rising from them in the cold air. Besides, you're magnificent creatures. Your biology is incredibly sophisticated. Your bioluminescent communication system alone represents evolutionary adaptation I've never seen before. The universe is better with you in it, fed and healthy. The Keth'hari exchanged rapid mental communications, their spine patterns flickering with excited confusion. No species had ever described them as magnificent. They were feared, avoided, sometimes fought, but never appreciated. Xerion approached the food first, her tracker's boldness overcoming caution. As she consumed the enhanced rations, her entire nervous system seemed to ignite. The carefully balanced nutrients didn't just satisfy hunger. They supercharged her depleted biology, bringing her closer to peak performance than she'd been in dozens of rotations. Impossible, she whispered, her mental voice carrying wonder. This is perfect. How does a prey species understand predator biology better than we do ourselves? Marcus, unaware of the mental conversation but noting the obvious positive response, smiled again. Would you like me to explain how the supplements work? I have some time, and I'd love to learn more about your species in return. And so began the first interspecies knowledge exchange in Keth'hari history, not through conquest or domination, but through a simple shared meal and one human's inexplicable kindness. By the seventh day, the meeting had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Marcus arrived each morning with increasingly sophisticated meals, while the Keth'hari pack began bringing offerings of their own, crystalline formations they'd carved with their claws, arrangements of ice that demonstrated their artistic capabilities, and most remarkably, information. Your species puzzles us greatly, Provider Marcus. Vex then communicated, his translator now rendering his thoughts with much greater nuance. The pack had been practicing with the device, learning to shape their mental communications for optimal translation. We have accessed our genetic archives, consulted the ancestral memories of 1,000 generations. Never has any species demonstrated your behavioral pattern. Marcus was setting up his portable laboratory today, a compact analysis station that could break down biological samples and provide real-time data. His xenobiology team had been pestering him for tissue samples, blood work, anything that could help them understand Keth'hari physiology. But Marcus had refused to ask. Trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to rebuild. What behavioral pattern? Marcus asked, genuinely curious as he prepared what he'd started calling Keth'hari cuisine. A fusion of human cooking techniques and nutritional requirements he'd calculated for their metabolism. Xerion answered, her elegant form moving closer than any of them had dared approach before. Altruism without genetic benefit. Your actions provide you no reproductive advantage, no territorial gain, no resource acquisition. Yet you persist in expending energy for our benefit. From an evolutionary standpoint, Corvash added, his youthful enthusiasm making his thoughts rapid and excited. Your behavior should have been eliminated from your gene pool millions of cycles ago. Creatures that waste resources on non-relatives cannot compete with those that conserve energy for personal survival and reproduction. Marcus laughed. A sound that the Keth'hari had initially interpreted as a threat display but now recognized as an expression of joy or amusement. You're absolutely right from a purely selfish evolutionary perspective. But humans discovered something interesting about 10,000 years ago. He activated his heating system and began preparing the morning meal, but his movements were more elaborate today. Not just heating and serving, but actually cooking, combining ingredients, adjusting temperatures, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Cooperation, Marcus continued, especially cooperation with non-relatives, with different species entirely, creates benefits that far outweigh the initial energy expenditure. When humans started working together, really working together, not just family groups, we went from scattered tribes to a spacefaring civilization in less than 12,000 years. Torgen, the massive assault specialist who had been silently observing for days, finally spoke. His mental voice was deep, rumbling with the power of a creature built for war. You speak of cooperation with prey species. This is comprehensible. Pack dynamics with lesser creatures for hunting efficiency. But cooperation with apex predators? This defies logic. Does it? Marcus asked, adding what appeared to be spices to the cooking mixture. The aroma was incredible, complex hydrocarbons that triggered satisfaction responses in the Keth'hari nervous system. Look what's happened in just 1 week. You've learned more about nutrition and biochemistry from our conversations than your species might have discovered in centuries of trial and error. I've learned about your sensory capabilities, your communication methods, your artistic expressions. He gestured to the ice sculptures that Keth'hari had created, abstract representations of movement and light that had given Marcus insights into how their visual processing worked. Knowledge sharing, Marcus said. It's the foundation of everything humans have accomplished. When we stopped seeing other intelligent beings as competition and started seeing them as collaborators, the universe opened up. Vexthen's spine patterns pulsed thoughtfully. Your species has encountered others? Other apex predators? Dozens, Marcus confirmed, serving the prepared meals. Today's offering was more substantial. A complete nutritional profile designed to not just sustain but optimize Keth'hari performance. Some became our closest allies. Some remain neutral trade partners. A few. He paused. Well, some couldn't move past the predator-prey dynamic. Those relationships didn't end well for anyone. The pack consumed their meals in contemplative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The food was beyond anything they'd experienced. Not just sustenance but pleasure, comfort, vitality. Their bioluminescent patterns brightened with each bite, and they could feel their strength returning to levels they'd forgotten were possible. Provider Marcus, Keth'hari said finally, you mentioned knowledge exchange. We have observed your curiosity about our biology. Our tracker training includes detailed understanding of anatomy, metabolism, neural function. Perhaps. She left the thought unfinished, but Marcus understood immediately. You'd be willing to share biological data? That would be incredible. My team has been wondering about your bioluminescent communication system for days. But I want to be clear, this isn't a trade. The food sharing continues regardless. And there it was again, that inexplicable human behavior that defied every model in their genetic memory. Offering benefit without demanding reciprocal payment. Corvash, emboldened by the provider's consistent kindness, approached even closer. We are curious about human biology. Your thermal regulation, your tool creation, your pack structure. You mentioned a team, but you hunt alone. Hunt. Marcus laughed again. Oh, we're not hunting. We're exploring, learning. My team is back at base camp analyzing samples, mapping the local ecosystem, trying to understand how life thrives in such extreme conditions. I'm the field biologist. I come out here to observe and catalog local species. The translation struggled with catalog, settling on something approximating record for future knowledge. You preserve knowledge of other species? Vex then asked. For what purpose? Understanding, Marcus said simply. Knowledge for its own sake. The universe is vast and full of incredible life forms. Every species has evolved unique solutions to survival challenges. By studying and preserving that knowledge, we all become stronger, smarter, more capable of thriving. Torgen's massive frame shifted, his assault-trained mind grappling with concepts that had no military application. And if this knowledge could be used against you, if sharing your capabilities with potential enemies makes you vulnerable. Marcus met the warrior's gaze steadily. Then we accept that risk because the alternative, isolation, fear, constant conflict, leads nowhere but extinction. Humans learned that lesson the hard way long ago. As if summoned by his words, Marcus's communicator crackled to life. Chen, this is base camp. We're reading multiple large biosignatures at your location. Do you need extraction? The Keth'hari tensed, their predatory instincts flaring at the mention of other humans potentially approaching their territory. Negative base camp, Marcus replied calmly. Situation is stable. I'm conducting peaceful first contact with local sapients. Recommend maintaining distance unless specifically requested. Acknowledged. Xenobiology team is standing by if you need consultation. Marcus deactivated the communicator and looked at the pack, noting their increased alertness. They're concerned for my safety, he explained. Humans are protective of pack members, even when we're exploring separately. Your pack would come if you called for aid? Vex then asked. Without question, Marcus confirmed. Just as I imagine yours would for any of you. The pack leader's spine patterns pulsed with what Marcus was learning to recognize as deep thought. Yes, the pack would come. But they would come to fight, to kill, to defend through violence. This human's pack would come to help, to protect, to preserve life rather than take it. What manner of evolution had produced such creatures? The breakthrough came on the 10th day, when Xerion made a discovery that would reshape both species' understanding of their universe. She had been studying Marcus's scanning equipment with permission, her tracker's instincts fascinated by technology that could analyze matter at the molecular level. Her enhanced pattern recognition, evolved for reading environmental signs and prey behavior, proved remarkably adaptable to interpreting scientific data. Provider Marcus, she called, her mental voice tight with excitement. Your biological scans. There is something you must see. Marcus approached, noting the unusual intensity of her bioluminescent patterns. What did you find? Your DNA structure, she said, manipulating the display with surprising dexterity. And ours. Look at the base sequences here and here. Marcus stared at the data, his scientific training immediately recognizing what Xerion had discovered. That's impossible, he whispered. Not impossible, Vex then rumbled, having approached to examine the findings. Inevitable. We share common genetic markers. Very ancient, but unmistakable. The implications crashed over Marcus like a wave. The Keth'hari weren't just another predator species. They were distant cousins. Somewhere in the deep past, perhaps millions of years ago, their evolutionary paths had diverged from a common ancestor. The Great Seeding. Torgen spoke for the first time since their initial meeting, his mental voice heavy with ancient memory. Our oldest legends speak of the time before time, when life was scattered across the stars by something. We assumed it was mythology. Marcus's hands shook as he accessed his own genetic database. Earth's paleontologists had long theorized about gaps in the fossil record, missing links in human evolution that suggested external influence. Could it be possible that life itself had been intentionally distributed across the galaxy? This changes everything, he breathed. If we share common ancestry, then cooperation isn't just possible. It's natural. We're not different species learning to coexist. We're family, separated by time and space, finding each other again. Corvash, his young mind more adaptable than his elders, was the first to fully grasp the magnitude of this revelation. If this is true for us, then perhaps other species as well? The entire galaxy might be connected by ancient kinship. The thought was staggering. If verified, it would revolutionize xenobiology, philosophy, and interspecies relations across known space. We must inform our respective peoples, Vex then declared, his pack leader instincts immediately recognizing the strategic importance of this discovery. This knowledge could prevent countless conflicts, establish new alliances. Wait, Marcus said, holding up a hand. We need to be careful about how we share this. Knowledge like this can be used to build bridges or justify conquest. Some humans might decide that shared ancestry gives them the right to claim kinship with species that don't want it. Some Keth'hari might see it as weakness, contamination of their genetic purity. Esikenara's patterns flickered with understanding. The provider speaks wisdom. Knowledge without context becomes weapon. So what do we do? Corvash asked. Marcus looked at each of them. These magnificent predators who had become colleagues, friends, family in the space of 10 days. We do what we've been doing. We share meals, share knowledge, build trust. But now we also become ambassadors. We prove that cooperation between our species isn't just possible. It's inevitable. Over the following hours, they developed a plan that would have seemed impossible 2 weeks earlier. Marcus would return to his base camp with Keth'hari representatives. Not as specimens or curiosities, but as partners in research. Together, they would document their shared heritage and develop protocols for introducing their species to each other safely, gradually, with respect for both cultures. There's something else, Marcus said as they prepared for the journey. My ship has deep space communication capabilities. If you're interested, we could try to contact other Keth'hari settlements. Let them know about the discovery. Vex then's patterns stilled completely, the Keth'hari equivalent of a human holding their breath. Other settlements? Yes, many packs, scattered across multiple worlds. Some we have not heard from in generations. Well, Marcus grinned. Looks like we have a lot of family to reunite. The pack bond crackled with emotions they had no names for. Hope, anticipation, and something they would later learn humans called joy. The simple pleasure of discovery shared with those you care about. As they began the journey toward Marcus's base camp, for apex predators walking alongside a single human across the frozen wasteland, Esikenara made one final observation. Provider Marcus, you said cooperation creates benefits greater than individual effort, but you never mentioned the greatest benefit. Which is? Her spine patterns pulsed with warm light. It means you are never alone. Marcus smiled, understanding perfectly. After 10 days with the pack, he could barely remember what loneliness felt like. 6 months later, the story of the human who shared his lunch with starving predators had become legend across multiple star systems. The Unity Station, humanity's newest deep space research facility, orbited Xerion Prime in a joint operation between the Terran Colonial Authority and the newly formed Keth'hari Collective. The station itself was a marvel of interspecies engineering. Human technology merged with Keth'hari bioengineering to create something neither species could have achieved alone. Dr. Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck, watching as Keth'hari hunting ships conducted training exercises alongside human vessels. The coordination was beautiful, predator pack tactics enhanced with human strategic planning, creating fleet maneuvers that maximized both species' strengths. Remarkable how it all began with food, said Dr. Sarah Voss, the expedition's lead anthropologist. She'd been studying the cultural exchange between their species, documenting how 2 radically different approaches to survival had found common ground. Not just food, Marcus corrected, watching as Corvash, now a junior ambassador, led a group of human children through the station's cultural exchange wing. It began with recognition, seeing intelligence and responding with respect rather than fear. Through the deck's transparent aluminum, they could see Esikenara and her research team working with human geneticists in the advanced laboratory. The tracker's pattern recognition abilities had proven invaluable in analyzing the complex genetic heritage they'd discovered. Already, They'd identified markers suggesting connections to 12 other species across the galaxy. The Great Seeding Theory was gaining credibility with each new discovery. Evidence suggested that millions of years ago, an unknown civilization had deliberately scattered genetic material across thousands of worlds, seeding the galaxy with related life forms that would, eventually, find each other again. The irony is beautiful, Voss continued. The Keth'hari spent millennia as apex predators, convinced that strength came from domination. Humans spent millennia fighting each other before learning cooperation. But when we finally met, we immediately recognized something familiar. A soft chime announced an incoming priority communication. The holographic display activated, revealing Vexthan's imposing form. The pack leader was aboard a Keth'hari exploration vessel, investigating reports of another related species in the Arcturus sector. Provider Marcus. Vexthan's voice carried warmth that would have been impossible in their initial meetings. We have made contact with the Veltar. They are similar to us but adapted for aquatic environments. They also carry the ancient markers. Incredible! Marcus leaned forward. Are they receptive to contact? Initially hostile, Vex then admitted. But when we shared your meal preparation techniques and explained the concept of cooperative abundance, his spine patterns brightened. They have agreed to cultural exchange. They wish to meet the humans who taught predators to share. Dr. Voss shook her head in amazement. A year ago, the idea of apex predators from different worlds cooperating would have been pure fantasy. Now we're looking at a potential galactic alliance based on shared heritage and mutual respect. The communication continued as Torgen appeared in the background of Vexthan's transmission. The massive warrior had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation of all. His assault training had evolved into protective specialization, using his formidable capabilities to safeguard joint human Keth'hari research teams exploring dangerous environments. There is more news, Torgen rumbled. The Veltar have songs, ancient songs that speak of star-scattered siblings and the Great Reunion. Provider Marcus, your simple act of sharing food may have begun the fulfillment of prophecy older than our recorded history. After the transmission ended, Marcus and Dr. Voss stood in comfortable silence, watching the bustle of interspecies activity around the station. Human engineers worked alongside Keth'hari designers to solve complex technical challenges. Children from both species played together in the recreation areas, their games involving chase and cooperation in equal measure. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd made a different choice that first day? Voss asked. If you'd followed standard first contact protocols, maintained safe distance, waited for the full diplomatic team? Marcus considered the question. The pack was starving. Without immediate intervention, they might not have survived another few days. And then none of this would have been possible. He pointed to a section of the station where Keth'hari younglings were learning human languages while human children practiced bioluminescent communication techniques. Sometimes the most important decisions are the simplest ones. See someone in need, help if you can. Everything else follows from there. A new transmission came in, this time from Earth. Admiral Harrison, Marcus's former commanding officer, appeared in the holographic display with barely contained excitement. Chen, you magnificent bastard. Do you realize what you've started? We've got reports of peaceful contact with 17 different predator species in the past 6 months. Every one of them uses some variation of your shared meal protocol. The Galactic Council is talking about officially adopting it as standard first contact procedure. Marcus grinned. Any word on the Veltar situation? Better than that. They've agreed to host the first Interspecies Cooperation Summit. 300 delegates from 42 different worlds, all species that have tested positive for the ancient genetic markers. Marcus, we're talking about the formation of a true galactic community. After the call ended, Dr. Voss turned to Marcus with an expression of scientific wonder. From a xenobiological perspective, this is the most significant development in galactic history. But from a human perspective, you turned enemies into family by sharing lunch. Marcus chuckled, but his expression grew serious. The universe is big and cold and dangerous. Every intelligent species develops under the assumption that survival means competition, that other life forms are threats to be eliminated or resources to be exploited. Breaking that assumption requires a leap of faith. And humans are good at leaps of faith? Humans are good at hope, Marcus corrected. Hope that intelligence recognizes intelligence. Hope that cooperation beats competition in the long run. Hope that the universe is big enough for everyone to thrive. Through the observation deck windows, they watched as a Keth'hari transport ship docked with the station. This would be the 15th pack to join the growing community, each one drawn by stories of the human who had seen starving predators and responded with kindness rather than fear. As the airlock cycled and new visitors emerged into the station, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Each new arrival brought fresh perspectives, different evolutionary adaptations, unique solutions to universal challenges. The diversity that once seemed like an insurmountable barrier was becoming their greatest strength. You know what the funny thing is? Marcus said to Voss as they headed down to greet the newcomers. I was just trying to be a good person, share my lunch with some hungry individuals. I never imagined it would change galactic civilization. Dr. Voss laughed. Maybe that's the point. The biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness. Who knows? Maybe the civilization that scattered our ancestors across the galaxy learned the same lesson millions of years ago. As they walked through corridors filled with the sounds of multiple languages and the soft glow of Keth'hari bioluminescence, Marcus reflected on how profoundly his life had changed. He'd come to Xerion Prime to study alien life forms. Instead, he discovered family, built bridges between worlds, and helped spark a revolution in how intelligent species interacted with each other. All because he'd been willing to share his lunch. In the cultural exchange wing, human children and Keth'hari younglings played a game they'd invented together, part chase, part cooperation, requiring both species' unique abilities to succeed. Their laughter and excited chirps filled the air, the sound of a future where cooperation wasn't just possible but natural. The universe was still big and cold and dangerous, but it was no longer lonely. And somewhere in deep space, other predator packs were learning a new concept, one that had no direct translation in their languages but was beginning to reshape their understanding of existence. Hope.